Okay, this is a video about how to mark and cut multiple opening mats. As you can see, a lot of these are like doing a puzzle, and there's always some flexibility and kind of different ways to do these. In fact, a lot of times I'll recommend to people bring in all the stuff that for sure you want to have in here, and then bring some extras just in case, and then we kind of lay it out like a big puzzle. And sometimes you need something somewhere to kind of help balance something out. Like in this case, he has all these metals, and the metals have to do with the paper documents above it that's describing the different types of metals and stuff. And so this one was a diploma, and he wanted that one in there too, but then without any metals there was just blank space, and this would be, you know, kind of with a lot of space down here. So he ended up he found another metal, more like a little badge, and then a number that relates to, I guess, this. So he brought this in later so that helps fill out the balance of the whole thing. And at first, when I measured all this stuff, I had this at 9.5 because there's so much space on the top and bottom, and I had this one at 10 because there's more of a height to the information that's on the piece of paper. And on looking at this again, I'm going to make both of these at 10 inches so that they'll, look nicer in the overall layout, instead of having one a little shorter than the other. And there's no reason that 10 inches wouldn't work for here too. It's just showing a little bit more than I would have to of the border. And so then what I do is start with a great big sheet of board, and in this case we're using black suede, and that's what this is. And what I could do is trust my measurements and cut the outside dimension of the board 30 by 16 3/4. The thing is, though, then I'm committed to the sizes that I have, and then I'm also committed to the fact that, is my math right on, adding up all these fractions and everything. And so what I prefer to do is start with a big board. Now I'm turning it over because you always mark the back, and I'm going to slide another mat board underneath here because that suede is so easy to scratch and make marks in when you're sliding it around on the surface of the table. So if I put another board underneath, then it's sliding on that board. And what I first do is mark the board, because when you're working on the back, what's on the left is on the right, and what's on the right is on the left. So first I'll put bottom, and then on the left hand side I'm writing the right, and then the right hand side I'm writing left, because when I turn this over it's going to be left over here and right over there, and then I'll have top over here. And since this is going to have the top all straight across, it's a rare occasion that I start with the top. I usually start at the bottom, but in this case I'm going to start with the top because I have everything all lined up at the top. And this one is going to have 2.5 inch border on the top and sides, and 2 3/4 at the bottom. So I'm marking this at the 2.5 inches. Sorry that my stand got bumped there a little bit. So I'm going to start and just mark 2.5 inches all down the right, and 2.5 inches all down the top. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to tape this board to the face of this so that the suede mat won't slide around on the table and get dented and scratched. I'll just tape it in about 4 spots here. And I've been making videos now for, well, a couple weeks anyway, and some of them are getting so long that I'm going to try to skip a lot of parts once you get the hang of the whole thing. And what I do is I take a tape measure, and I always start measuring from the 1 because I get more of an accurate measurement. And then I'll start over on the right, and the right one is 8 inches wide, and I'm just going to double check that that's going to work again. When I'm measuring these, when the customer's here, it's, you know, just close enough so I can get a size that would get me a price. And the right one was 8 inches, and that looks real good. And the left one is 7. And you know what? I think I'm going to make those both 7 3/4. Rather than make 1 7 and 1 8, because there's enough room on the paper that I could then have both the one on the left and the one on the right but be the same size. So our left and right, far left and far right are both going to be 7 3/4 by 10, and then the center one is going to be 7 3/8 tall, 8.5 wide. So what I'll do is start over here. Let's see if you can see that. Let's see here, I've got to move the camera. I've got a tripod now holding this camera up. There, I think you can see that a little better. So since these are 7 3/4, I start with the 1 and go right on my line of 2.5 inches, and so I measure out to 8 3/4 and put a line there, and then I always do 3/4 in between when I'm using a single mat, so then I'll go 8 3/4 and 9.5, and then I do the same thing down here. And do 8 3/4 and 9.5, so that I get an actual measurement of 7 3/4. Now my next one in the center, I've got 8.5 with a question mark, and that's got 4 metals below it. So what I want to do is double check that at 8.5 inches will I be able to get the 4 metals lined up nicely in there in one opening, and it looks like I will. So I'm going to leave that 8.5 inch measurement there. So when I'm starting with the 1, that means I need to now go to 9.5. And then of course I add my 3/4 of an inch for the space between. And then I again have 7 3/4. So then since I'm counting from the 1, I go to 8 3/4. And since my borders on the top and sides are 2.5, now I'll mark that at 2.5 inches. And what I do is put a circle around that mark so I know that that's where I'm going to cut the edge of the board. But before I cut anything, I'm going to mark the whole thing. I'm going to take everything out of the folder and lay it on the openings to make sure they're all going to fit before I cut anything. And it's a lot easier to do some erasing and remarking than it is to start over and cut a whole new board, especially when you're looking at a very expensive suede mat. These boards cost an average of $42 more a sheet than a regular mat. So even our cost on these boards is not something you want to have to do over again. And then we've got the height of the top openings at 10 inches for the left and right and 7 3/8 for the middle. So now I'll go in and measuring from the 1 again, I hit 11 inches. And then I'll add 3/4 to that because I want to have some space between it and the next opening of 3/4 of an inch, and come down and do that again. So I'm marking it at 11 because I'm starting with the 1 to get the most accurate measurement. If I tried to start with this little end thing here that kind of moves, that has this little tongue on the end, that's never as accurate. So I always start to measure by the 1. Then I'll come in the center here, and that one was 7 3/8. So starting with the 1, I'll go to 8 3/8. And then I'll add 3/4 to that. And I'm going to shut the camera off now because you kind of get the idea. I'm making marks where all the lines are going to be. And so I'm going to shut this off and continue marking the mat. You don't have to watch me, for another many minutes marking this mat. So you kind of get the idea now. So I'll shut this off and pause it for a while. Okay, now I have all my little marks made of where the openings for all these different pieces will be in here, and now it's just a matter of drawing a line between all the marks to end up to find exactly where the openings will be cut. So now I just line up my marks and start doing, I kind of do one square at a time, and find the top, the right, the left, and the bottom of each opening by connecting the dots, kind of. And I guess you get the idea. I'm just finding all the lines and just keep connecting the dots and marking all the mats. But I'll mark some more here so you get the whole idea. I might as well finish marking it since I'm so close. Now this one here, I forgot to measure 4 inches down on this side, so that's what I'm doing now. And what I want to find out is if the width of the piece of paper will be a nice width for the opening that also will have the metals below it. Because I can adjust that bigger or smaller once I lay the metals actually right out on our drawing here. Okay, hopefully you can see the lines okay in this lighting. So this was the top, so now I'm going to turn it to the bottom. And now I'll pull the paper and everything out of here to see how it's going to line up. And remember, this that shows on the right is going to be put on the left, because when the mat's flipped, then it'll be on the, when you're looking at it from the face, that'll be on the other side. So first what I'm going to do is see if the papers fit. So this is the paper that goes on the right. So I'm going to lay it right up here into our opening before it's been cut and make sure the size is going to work. And that should work. So that I know is good. Then what I do when I find out that's the size I want is I'll take the pencil and draw a little half circle around the edge to know that that's going to be the way I want it. And now underneath that is an opening that has this, whatever that is, I'm not really sure. And then it has this little metal in there too. So the height of that works, and it's kind of more room than we really need on the sides. So I'm going to have to give that some thought, whether I want to come in a little on the sides, but because of the metal there's a lot of room here to the left and the right at the top of this metal. So it's not an easy decision on some of these things. You know, if it's better to have the openings match or to have it a little more concise with the size of the thing going in there. So that I'm actually going to think about a minute. Now I'm going to take the paper that goes in the middle and lay that up there and see if that's going to work. See, there's a lot of blank space on the left and right, and so that should be good. But now let's see if there's plenty of room for 4 metals to sit in this opening. I'm going to have to move some stuff around here. Just bear with me a minute. Okay, those are the metals. And the 4-inch height looks good. And that's really good. The width that matches the width of the opening for the piece of paper in the center. That looks very nice with the size of the metal, so that's good to know. So now I'm going to put those back, and now that we're sure those are going to work, I'll draw little half moons around those. And then the last one here is with this Department of Air Force document, and that looks like it'll be perfect. And now there's 3 metals that go underneath that one, and that's going to be another not an easy decision, because I know that this could be a bit tighter for those metals. So now that I am looking at, the bottom openings, what I've decided to do is make them a 1/2 inch narrower, the openings of the left and right, than the piece of paper, so it'll be a little more balanced with the size of the stuff going in these bottom openings. And so I'll need to mark those, and So I'm just coming in a half an inch. I could have left them the same, but I think it's just going to look, more custom when you adjust for the sizes. But it's not an easy decision. It's not like it would have been a wrong thing to keep them the same as they were. It's just, my opinion, they're going to look a little nicer with half an inch in on both sides. And one of the reasons I'm still filming is I want to show you what I do that really helps when you're cutting this, not to get confused about, which side of the bevel you're going to have in the mats when you're cutting it. Because if you put the mat board where you have the centerpiece at the wrong side, you could accidentally cut a reverse bevel in, and then you are going to have to do the whole thing over again. So what I do to make it real clear where to actually position the mat cutter is I besides making these little half round I kind of like consider them like stops. So you're going to stop the blade and not go, beyond those little half circles. Besides doing that, I come in and make marks all over so that there's no mistaking this is the piece that stays and this is the one that gets cut out. Because it's easy when you're, doing a whole bunch of things to kind of lose track of where you are in the process. And I'll keep doing this. The one question I'm having is if I should keep 3/4 of an inch between the center one like I have in the left and the right when I have such a short diploma in there that's a couple inch shorter. Now I could make the decision to drop this all the way down to the bottom, but then I would have like 3 inches away from the top, and I don't really like that. But it's not an easy decision, The other thing I could do is maybe make this like twice as far down and drop this whole thing, maybe like down into here. The thing is, these 4 metals relate to this piece of paper, so I'm kind of debating on whether to, leave it as close as that. And it's, these aren't easy decisions. It's not like if I left it like this, it's wrong, and if I brought it all down here, it's wrong. But to me, that would be too much space to have between the paper and the metals. And but I'm going to make a decision here and kind of drop this down. I'm going to go down another, let's see here what looks comfortable. Right now it's at 3/4. I'm going to drop it down another inch, so that would mean, well, you know what, I'm just going to drop it down another 3/4. So it'll just be 3/4 of an inch down more than the other one, so that's a total of 1.5 inches. But that's kind of balancing the amount of blank space between the distance between the bottom of the paper and the top of the metals, and the distance between the bottom of the metals and the bottom of the other openings to the left and right. But again, not exactly like a clear, exact way to do it. In other words, if I left it the way it was, it probably would be just fine, but I kind of want to get some of this space not so big, so that's why I'm dropping it down. And then too, sometimes when there's a lot of space, it makes you wonder what was supposed to go in there. And I run into this all the time where someone might have a thing like this and it'll be, missing something, so that the lineup is just, way off. And sometimes it's where it's so far removed from what a nice balanced puzzle looks like, that I kind of ask them to sometimes go in and find something else, or else we'll look at maybe a horizontal or a vertical arrangement rather than a horizontal arrangement, and the idea is to have it as balanced as we can. And so this line is going away, and this line is going away. Yeah, I like that. So then what we have is 1.5 from the top of the metals to the bottom of the paper, but then I have just 2 inches rather than 2 5/8 inches from the bottom of this row of metals compared to the bottom of that row of metals. So I think that's going to look a little better. And you can see once you move things around, you get kind of shadows of lines. So here's where making these little half circle stops, and then doing a lot of marking so that you know exactly where to make that opening. Like now that there's a shadow here, when I'm doing this, it might be tempting to go stop here when I'm supposed to stop there. So I'll go in and cross off any of these little shadows here, and then I'll go like that between them all. And you kind of get the idea here where we're trying to make sure we just cut the lines right where they're supposed to be. And I found the outside of the board, and that's for the width, but now I want to measure the 2 3/4 down to find the height of the board. And again, I'm circling the little line I just drew, and that tells me that's the line to cut on. So let's see, I'll cut this out. What you're not seeing is my wall-mounted cutter that I'm using. It's right behind the camera. But I'm filming these alone, so I don't have someone, filming every step when I'm out of the camera angle. But what I'm trying to do is give you enough information so that you could do this without me physically right in front of you describing in person how to do this, that now you could do it on your own, hopefully. So there's what that looks like. And now I'll be able to start cutting, and I still have my mat board underneath so that I'm always cutting into a mat and I get a nice clean cut, and then I won't be damaging the suede because I've got that board protecting it. So I'll shut this off now until I get everything ready to start cutting. Okay, now I've got my mat cutter all set up, and so I'm ready to start cutting. And if you'll notice, what I'm doing is, bringing the blade and just touching it to the mat to make sure that I'm going to be splitting the pencil line of my marks here. So I'll come down in my little areas where the kind of half circles are showing me exactly where to dive in and where to pull out the blade to make sure I don't go over the edge. And you've got to remember that you always want the mat border to be between your body and the rail of the mat cutter. So then you'll always have the bevel where you want it. And since this one worked out to use, the same size openings in the far left and right, it's a lot less confusing than things that have all sorts of different sizes and many different openings. And the ideal thing is that you have, a straight line across the top, and as much as possible straight lines on the left, right, and bottom, but it usually doesn't work out that way. Like this time we're going to have, the left and right bottom of the opening for this project lined up, but the middle one's going to be higher because this piece of paper in the center was so much shorter than the other two papers. And if I try to remember, if I cut the mat, I take my fingernail and kind of, just rub it across the edge to make sure that I hadn't cut it already. And of course, normally when I'm cutting these, I'm not talking. And there's a lot of times when I do these that they're so huge that I can't, reach all the way to the far corners of the mat, and I end up getting a stool and kind of leaning and almost, standing on a stool, leaning stretched way across a table to be able to, cut the edges that are so far away from the edge of the table that I can't reach them. So it's just a matter of going around the whole thing now, and just keep cutting all the way around. But I guess I could pause this and then just keep cutting, because I'm sure you get the idea now. Okay, I've got 3 sides of all the openings cut and just starting to cut the 4th side, and just wanted to show you how important it is to mark all the places you don't want your blade to go through. Like right now I'm going to be cutting this tall opening here, and right below it I had a line drawing where we were going to put the metals, so it'd be real easy to kind of lose concentration and go cut through that if I wouldn't have scratched all that out. So now I'll cut the last side of this opening and then pull it forward and cut the last side of the opening below it. And I try so hard not to have overcuts that sometimes I have more undercuts than I like, and that means I have to carefully turn it over and put the blade in at the exact same bevel, and cut the fallout free from the mat opening. And again, I'm remembering not to put any weight on the bar, because somehow when you do that, it kind of wants to bend the bar up and make the mat slide underneath it. And it usually takes longer to mark the mat than it does to cut the mat. A lot of it's because you're making decisions about placement of the openings and maybe making some changes like we did on this one. Okay, there we go. Now I'll turn this over and take this board off that we used to have under the mat, so we didn't scratch it. That we always, you always want to cut into an under mat when you're cutting a mat so you get a crisp bevel. If you were to just cut without this and let the blade go in this vacant space down the mat cutting bar, you'd have a ragged edge most of the time. Now we'll pop the openings out. There's one. See, now this one is stuck a little right there, so then I grab a razor blade and let go of it to kind of follow exactly where the line is and just make that final little teeny cut. And see, if I was just to have pulled on it, I'd get kind of a little furry edge on the corner there. which wouldn't be real attractive, but for 6 openings and just having one spot that needed to be cut free, that's pretty good. So there we go. And I'll shut this off, and then hopefully when I'm done with the whole project I'll remember to take a picture of it all when it's done. I'm just finishing up the multiple opening mat with all the metals. Thought I would show you what the back looks like here. These are all the little clamp kind of things that hold the metals into place. And here's what's going on in the front. And what's going on with the frame and all the tape in the corners is, I just wanted to show you this. The outside edge of the frame is so thin, and it's got a gesso coating, that when I put a nail in the frame it often cracks. So what I did, rather than nail it, is I glued it together one corner at a time and let it sit up for about 3 or 4 hours, and then I put the whole thing together one corner at a time. And after it was all together with no nails, then I turn it over and put in these corner clamps. So I thought I would show that to you, so you don't always have to put in nails if you know the frame is going to crack when you put in a nail. The other thing I did, I know you can see that when the light hits it, that I wrapped the whole thing with that 2-inch wide tape, where just an eighth of an inch of it's around the glass, because this is that black suede, and every little light speck shows up on that. So I wrapped the whole thing like a package so no more little specks fall in between the glass and the suede. So here's the finished product, all done. And I'm glad of how the arrangement worked out. And even a little simple one like this, there's lots of decisions to make, you know, and could have made individual openings a little different size. Could have dropped that center opening for the 4 metals down more, or brought it up more. And but I'm happy with the way the arrangement looks. And so there, it's all done. Just thought you might like to see the finished product.